Yes, Christina. Hey, y'all. Welcome. Happy, hot, humid, amazing Tuesday. Is that a word? Is amazing a word? I don't feel like it is. It might be. Yes. Oh, Christina's here. We have one person. Oh, I should invite her to go live is what it says. No, she's very busy doing other things. They've notified others. Hey, you guys. Welcome. Tell us where you're from. Tell us if it's 80 degrees there, if it's 175 degrees. It is past hot. I feel bad for those little people that work outside or the football players and all the things. Okay, so I'm ready with the questions, kids. Y'all start when you're ready, Christina. I think you're on deck.
Okay, so we have an anonymous question.
Okay.
Because, of course, they're concerned that they're going to get backlash from work.
Okay.
So the question is, today a diagnostician handed out all the IEPs in given grade level and instructed us to then just shred students that weren't theirs. Isn't that a breach of confidentiality?
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, the only persons that are legally allowed to look at somebody's IEP documents are people that have an educational need. So we don't hand them out to people. I don't hand them out to people on my team. That would be inappropriate. So, and we just hand them out to people and just say, shred them? Like, what? The Hello Kitty are you talking about? Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, can you explain targeted intervention further?
Sure. So targeted intervention is we look at the impact of the child's disability. As it says in Andrew F. March 22nd, 2017, that the LEA, the special educators, are charged with writing an IEP to enable a child to make progress in light of their unique circumstances. And so if you don't know the child's unique circumstances, the totality of the impact of their disability, how they show up at school, the characteristics of that disability, what it looks like across settings, your targeted intervention is just going to be a little more extra general education. And so that is based upon great FIEs, full individualized evaluation, standardized testing, noted behaviors, concerns, functional needs, emotional needs, cognitive needs that come with the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, and really targeting what is the deficit in the class and what sort of special educator do I need to provide instruction around those deficits.
Excellent. Another anonymous one came in. I had asked the diagnostician to refer my student to the end of last year for testing. They are, I'm estimating, at least a year behind in reading. She popped her head in the room and after a few minutes left, and then later that day she passed me in the hall and said, "They're good. I think it's just ADHD."
They're good. I feel like that's a great diagnostic instrument. They're good. Here's the deal, kids. The law, Child Find, which is the foundation of IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, says this and only this. We evaluate children with suspected disabilities who may be in need of special education and related services. It didn't say go ask your friends if they think they're good. So unless the school, the LEA, has provided you with a robust prior written notice that includes all 7 components of the requirement under Part B of IDEA, they've not fulfilled their obligation to deny you testing.
Excellent answer. So I have another question. What can you do if they say no to time and a half for compensatory time?
They don't say that to me.
How do we arrive at, how do we choose the percentage?
Well, when you compensate for somebody, it's not an equal exchange, right? So if I missed 10 hours of speech and language therapy, you giving me 10 hours is not compensating. So let's take that word, compensation. So there's no language in IDEA about compensatory time. However, in case law, hearing officers will indicate, whether it's case law or federal complaints or settlements that we do, compensatory time, the intention of that is to return the student back to where they would have been had the IDEA violation never occurred. And so if you are in agreement that equal time would return that student back to where they would have been had the violation not occurred, and you are amenable to that, then do that. But replacing the minutes, in my experience, doesn't compensate the student because, man, you have missed a lot. So I think that's a very fair offer. And so when I go to the table, I always say that I'm here to certainly resolve this issue and rebuild trust between the LEA and the school district. And I believe that this is a starting point to do that. If you're going to deny me compensatory time to return the student back to where they would have been had your violation not occurred, then we can certainly look at resolving this through another dispute resolution option. You don't have to agree to a terrible settlement.
Exactly. My child has CP, and I was told that CP would be under orthopedic impairment, not OHI. Is that correct?
So cerebral palsy is not an OHI. OHI is an other health impairment. An other health impairment is one of the 13 federal eligibilities. It's a medical condition that is acute, that is expected to impact the individual for a lifetime. CP is not a medical condition. It is a condition that comes out of a medical experience or need that affects the student. And that student usually presents in school with an orthopedic impairment, sometimes a speech impairment. And remember, an educational eligibility, also OHI, let me go back to that. OHI also says that it can be treated with medicine. So often we will see cerebral palsy or Down syndrome listed as an OHI. There's no medicine for cerebral palsy. There's no medicine for Down syndrome. Additionally, there's no SDI for cerebral palsy, and there's no SDI for Down syndrome. There's not some sort of target intervention that you're going to give a child to mitigate an additional chromosome, right? To mitigate the injury that occurred that resulted in the cerebral palsy. So I certainly understand that. So often kiddos with cerebral palsy will have a speech impairment, they'll have orthopedic impairment, but they're not an OHI student.
Right, very good. Can a life-threatening allergy be protected under an IEP?
Yeah, so an allergy can be protected under an IEP, can be protected under a general ed student, under a 504 student. Any student that has that sort of medical need, you're going to make sure that in the school they have an IHP, an individualized healthcare plan that has to be updated with new doctor's orders after July 1st of every year.
Excellent. Okay. I've got an anonymous one for you.
Is it about my hair?
It's always about the hair, Karen, or the lipstick.
The lipstick.
What color are we wearing tonight?
I think that we all know that this is, because you guys all want to know, this is number 180. Go get it while they're still selling it. Pink Flamingo from L'Oreal. I think they're about to discontinue it. So I don't want you to not have matching lips.
All right. I'm writing from the great state of Louisiana.
Yay!
What are the legal requirements and best practices as it pertains to putting a child in a more restrictive setting? Or are there specific legal requirements about what the schools must do in order to change to the more restrictive setting? So background, we started school today. There already talk of students, quote, not being in the right place, unquote, and I'm trying to make sure that I have all of the correct information before voicing my concerns to admin. I am currently a special education teacher, and our admin wants to change a placement without having collected any data or seen their current IEP from the prior school. I don't think this is legal, is it? Question.
That's a lot of questions. I'm going to answer that. So first of all, best practices, I'm going to hurt your feelings. It's not a thing. A thing is something I can print out. A thing is something that's codified. Codified means it's a law. Best practices is kind of like the golden rule. It's like be nice, be ethical. But best practices, I can't print out best practices. Best practices is an assumption how grown-up people should behave, right? So let's talk about the law. The least restrictive environment, otherwise known legally as extent of non-participation. So when a student comes to a school, at any point, least restrictive environment is a consideration. We educate students with their non-disabled peers to the maximum extent possible with supplementary aids, supports, and services. And when that doesn't work, we make adjustments. We don't yank them and put them in self-contained. We make adjustments. We send in more support. We make adjustments. We reduce the depth and breadth of the academic demand. We give them breaks. We do other things, but we don't just change them. We certainly don't change them with data. Data is something that I can print out. Data comes from teacher observation, formal assessments, input from all 5 of the multidisciplinary team members, which include, number 1, the expert, the parent, the LEA representative in your parish in Louisiana, the general ed teacher, the special education teacher, and an evaluator that's able to do evaluations and answer questions about them. So I would tell your wonderful leader in your parish to slow their roll and let the good times roll in Louisiana.
All right. Is it true that in IDEA that if a student has a diagnosis of ADHD, they're supposed to add it to the IEP?
No. You can have a diagnosis of anything. There's no requirement your diagnosis being added to the IEP. The IEP must, at minimum, contain your federal eligibilities. So I have kiddos that have federal eligibilities. They might have autism, they might have a speech impairment, and they might have ADHD, but it doesn't rise to the level of being a special education eligibility. So if that ADHD is impacting that student across settings and he rises to the level of needing specially designed instruction, then certainly it is a special education eligibility. But certainly in the present levels, something we don't have in every state, we want to list their federal eligibilities, and then we additionally want to list any medical conditions.
Excellent. Okay. Can monthly minutes be over-serviced to make up for upcoming holidays and possible absences?
Wow, that sounds like free hairspray and lipstick. That's something I've never heard of. We don't want to over-service a student. More of a service doesn't change outcomes, right? So giving a kid speech 5 times a week doesn't make them less impacted by their speech and language impairment. We deliver the therapy, the related or instructional service, and then we work on GMF, generalization, maintenance, and fluency. We don't just give them therapy, intervention. We need to see if it's working and if we can use it across settings.
Excellent. Okay. Can we talk about doctors who write a script to the school for their kids to be on an IEP?
Well, that's no such thing. A prescription is filled at a pharmacy, not at a school. I certainly appreciate medical doctors and their input to often with our families work tirelessly to help schools move it along and get an IEP started, but it's not a demand letter.
All right, and then Lauren asked, she was thinking about becoming a advocate, was wondering whether or not there is enough demand.
Yeah, that's funny. There's 7.5 million children in America with an IEP. I think there's about 10 advocates in America. So, yeah. Yep.
All right. If a student has an IEP, but mom is homeschooling, does the school still provide speech?
So, related services being provided by your district, county, or city are specific to them being granted by the local education agency. This misnomer that they have to give you related services is simply not true. So it's been my experience that almost all school districts are going to grant that, but not in totality. I had a child who had a speech impairment and was visually impaired, and the parents pulled them for either homeschool or private school, I can't remember which, and assumed that the school would continue with her services for vision impairment and speech, and the school only provided speech.
All right, so this is Amanda asked, district refused to allow staff to fill out rating scales and refused to allow the doctor to observe for an IEE that I funded.
So an IEE has the same sorts of components that you would have if the multidisciplinary team member was an employee of the district. So the same sorts of things that an LSSP, a social worker, an LPC would do to do an evaluation has to be granted to the IE provider. Otherwise, you've limited their scope and practice to deliver appropriate evaluations for that student.
All right. My daughter has NLVD, is nonverbal. It's a nonverbal learning disability. School said they can't give her a goal because it's not an IDEA.
So it's not an IDEA. So is your student nonverbal? Because that would be under speech and language impairment. There are only 13 federal eligibilities, and sometimes we have to kind of find the thing closest to that eligibility to get them services, but it is not an eligibility under IDEA at this time.
All right, and then I feel like we've had this one before in prior lives, but fetal alcohol syndrome, is that covered under OHI?
So it could rise to the level of being another health impairment, fetal alcohol syndrome, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Both of those, based on the acuity, could rise to the level of an OHI.
Okay, excellent. And then one last question, and then I'm going to toss it to, I'm looking at
Quinn. I think you're tossing it to Quinn.
Coming to Quinn.
She's so excited, and her face is all red. It's fantastic.
Quinn's on deck. You got one question. It's your turn, lady. All right. Can a child who does not have any disabilities be moved to a self-contained special ed classroom?
Not legally. No. Special ed classrooms are solely for disabled children. Okay, Quinn.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm looking for a.
While Quinn's pulling up that question, I saw another one pop up asking when the next 2-day virtual was.
The next 2-day virtual is in the middle of September. We just booked it. So whatever those, I want to say, what?
16th and 17th.
September 16th and 17th is our next 2-day virtual. Saturday and a Sunday.
Okay,
I think Quinn got rid of the Rottweiler. There was a wild animal in her room.
I'm sorry. My daughter has an IEP and she is 7. The teacher and the school psychologist are asking for a home visit.
Why? The only reason a school district would come into your home is that if we agreed for testing for in-home or parent training, which would require an evaluation. And then based upon those results, if the student met eligibility or the parents for in-home and or parent training, then we would talk about hours to implement those services. But no, thank you. Unless you're having like a Tupperware party, then I would like to come to that.
Okay, here's a back-to-back. What is Read 180? And then somebody asked, can I opt out of Read 180 at any time?
So Read 180 is an instrument that some school districts purchase to work on kids' reading, to measure their reading, but you don't get to opt out of the curriculum, whether it's electronic or not, that a district or a state purchases to use with kids.
How long after requesting testing does a school have to provide a consent form? It has been over a month.
So when you request testing, if you didn't request it in writing, you didn't request it. So once you've requested testing in writing, they have 15 calendar days to respond. 15. And at the end of that 15 days, they will either grant the testing or they will deny it. So once that's granted, then you should be able to come in very quickly, like within a day or two, and sign notice and consent. And then depending on where you live in these great United States, it will be somewhere between 30 and 60 school days to complete those evaluations.
Can a principal say no to including something on the IEP?
Well, you know, principals, they're usually the sheriff. So they can. That would be a violation of IDEA because decisions are made as a multidisciplinary team, not unilaterally.
Okay. Is asking for a home visit from a teacher or a psychologist a normal practice?
No. I mean, unless the parent wants it for some reason. Again, you know, what is the purpose of it? When we have, evaluations in the home, it's to see if there's a skill that's being accessed and acquired at home. It's not being done at school, or vice versa. I mean, we have a skill at school, but we don't have it at home. But we don't, yeah, this is not Child Protective Services. We don't need a home visit.
Okay, so here's one of your favorites. My daughter didn't pass the STAR test, and I was told it was mandatory and that she can't have an elective in place of it. For what is the time that she left that off there? But the
So if she didn't pass the STAR test, I assume that you're in the great state of Texas. So House Bill 4545 has had some adjustments with House Bill 1416. So you want to reach out to Inquire, INQUIRE, at spedtex, spedtex.org, and ask for the information about House Bill 4545 and House Bill 1416. If your child is on an IEP, there's different parameters around that. If your child is not on an IEP, there's different parameters around that. So certainly reach out and get those two links. They have brand new updated guidelines, but no, you don't have to take that. So the school has to offer the hours to you, but you can thank them and opt out of them.
Okay. Do SPED teachers, I guess this is teachers, do SPED teachers have to track minutes or only related services? The school said it's not required.
So there's no requirement to track minutes. There's a requirement that related instructional service providers have a log that they logged in to provide the minutes, but nobody's walking around with a clicker. We assume that if you started at 10:20 and she had 20 minutes, you're probably done at 10:40, but nobody has to track those minutes. What we do have to track, RE, are the accommodations used routinely and effectively, and we have to log what occurred when I worked on the IEP goal. So if you are an implementer on the IEP goal, which could be general ed, special ed, or another special educator, you are on the hook for monitoring and tracking the data on those goals. That's why we receive federal funds.
Okay. My child is not at grade level, and he is special education. He receives special education services. Can the school take him out of the regular classroom?
Take him out. So we don't take kids in or out. We decide as a committee the best place to provide them instruction to maximize their IEP. So there are kids that general ed setting for a specific content area is not the appropriate setting. So it's very important that we look at it across content area, and then we look at it bell to bell. Sometimes we look at it bus to bus. I have a child that's in high school that I serve that is in life skills all day long and in honors orchestra. And he has an intellectual disability. So it's not a one and done, but certainly we want to look at it, how does let's say he had autism, how does his autism impact him in science? How does his autism impact him in math? How does his autism impact him in ag, right? And the answer to each of those should be different because children are humans. They're not little robots. And so if we haven't done it that way, we haven't done it effectually. So again, the law says that the LEA, the school, not you, is charged with that you have an obligation. The school has an obligation to craft a IEP to enable the student to make progress in light of his unique circumstances. And it also says the IEP has to be reasonably calculated. Let's lean into that, shall we? Reasonably calculated. And I find that a lot of IEPs are cut and paste. And I think that I spend longer writing my Thanksgiving shopping list than some IEPs that I see when I'm representing families across these great United States. And it's completely 4,000,000% unacceptable. I don't care if we had the pandemic, Harvey, an avalanche. These most marginalized population in public school continue to be the most marginalized, and it's unacceptable.
Yes, I would agree. Okay, there's been a couple more questions about what is the best way to become an advocate, and can you describe the 2-day virtual training?
Life-changing, and you're going to need a leave because your head will hurt. So our training's guaranteed. You're not going to find better training. It's the best there is. Probably over, I think it used to be, I can ask Alicia, just about 60%. It's closer now to 75% of the people we train are school-based members, and we love you because you are desperate for training. The 2-day virtual will equip you fully to be a full-time advocate, to be an amazing parent advocate, or the most amazing school-based member at the IEP table.
Okay. Is there a limit to how many goals should be in an IEP?
Yeah. You need to limit them to where they're reasonable. Reasonable for the student and reasonable for the staff. I don't want teachers walking around with a clipboard. More does not maximize anything. I don't know where we got that idea. Well, unless you're shopping, right? So if he has a math deficit, let's find out a really good math goal and work on that. We can have a pristine objectives and benchmarks, but I don't need 7 math goals. So, we need to be reasonable. All of us that sit at the IEP table, if he has a math deficit, let's work on that. If he has a behavior need, let's work on that. But I don't need 52,000 goals to mitigate the impact of his disability and to address his unique circumstances.
Right. Does a charter school have to abide by the same standards as a public school?
What was that word you just used? Y'all, look at me. Don't do it. Don't. It would be like me dating my first husband. Don't. Charter schools are schools of choice. I had a kid one time, I think she made it 45 minutes. And literally the principal, she had an IEP, the principal was like, come get her. Unfortunately, public schools, without exception or exemption, are the best setting for kids with disabilities almost always when we get it right. We don't always get it right, but we almost always do. Charter schools, I have never in 27 years, and I do about 500 IEPs a year, I've never, ever had a child successful at all in special ed in a charter school. Sorry.
That's unfortunate. Can a long-term sub be a SPED teacher sub under a certified SPED teacher's guidance?
Are these trick questions, ma'am? There's no guidance because you're not there. I'm going to guide you from a distance. Isn't that like a Bette Midler song? No. So let's talk about that. Can we talk about that? I printed it out. I did a TikTok video the other day because I love a printout. This lie, say it with me, lie, that there are emergency certifications for special ed is wrong. You think I'm wrong? Call the Office of Special Ed Programs, October 2022. There is no emergency special educator. So I pulled up the emergency guide for TEA, Texas Education Agency, where we have 605,000 children on IEP. And the emergency permits are only to licensed certified teachers. Therefore, other extensions for them. There is no exception for SPED. So I don't know where we imagined this. Substitutes are that. They're subbing in for somebody else. If you had a substitute teacher who was a certified special education teacher, that's fantastic. But we don't usually have a special ed teacher. But she can't be the special ed teacher and the general ed teacher. So if your 4th grade teacher has a long-term sub who's a certified special education teacher, then she can't be the special ed teacher and the general ed teacher. So, as we say in Mexico, lo siento.
Right. Holly would like to know if it is possible to use accommodations when taking the SAT.
Allegedly. So, all of those boards, we have to apply for those accommodations. And as much as I, really want school to do a better job on IEPs, we have no say in what happens on SAT accommodations. We submit them, and they either grant them or they don't. And it's really like a game of roulette. You have no idea what they're going to grant.
Okay, I know that you touched on this and hit this, and if I am asking the same question again, just stop me. But what can I do if my non-SPED kid was put into a self-contained classroom?
I can call the principal and ask them to rectify it immediately. before I go live on TikTok in front of the front door of the building. Yeah, I would do that. Yeah, I really would. Yeah. Talk about breaking the law. You've actually broken the law for the other SPED kids.
Yeah, well, yes.
No well, ma'am. There's no well. There's no yeah well. It's just a yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree. My son is not at grade level, but he receives special education services. If they request him to be in a self-contained class only, can I refuse?
So decisions aren't requests. If the data demonstrates the need, then we apply it. There's no request. We're not asking. We're not visiting. The data drives every decision. Every decision should be pristine because our decisions are based solely on what does the law say and what does the data show. Those are the two statements I live by. What does the law say, and it ain't changing, and what does the data show? And when we tease those two things out, we should all come to the same conclusion on the child's needs.
Okay, here's a fun one. What tips do you have for an intern school psychologist?
Eat your Wheaties. Carb load. I was in an IEP meeting today. I won't tell you where. And it was the poor girl's first IEP meeting ever. And she was somewhere between, you know that like you're smiling because you're afraid if you stop smiling you'll burst into tears. I was having to address some problems with the school district with the executive director sitting there. And you remember it's about the child. Remember that the problem that you have with somebody else is not accurate. The problem that you have is the problem. It's not the other person. And that we are all coming from different sides trying to resolve the same issue. But we all have limitations when we address that issue. But thank you for serving kids in school.
Yes, it's going to be a fun job. Is meeting an eligibility an art decision? That would be an IEP decision. Or an LSSP or DIACS decision?
Well, it's always the team's decision. We make decisions as a team. There are 5 stakeholders in an IEP meeting. If you don't have all 5 stakeholders, like if you're in Houston ISD, and all 5 stakeholders aren't there, you're not in a legal meeting. So until all 5 stakeholders are there, you don't have a convened IEP meeting. And once they are all there, we present everybody with the totality of the information. And based upon that, since we're all grown and sane, we make appropriate decisions for kids.
Okay, this is a little cryptic. I'm going to try to put it together and hope that you can help me. So my daughter got diagnosed with an auditory processing disorder. She needed special education, was told the MTSS process has to be in place first. Although she said she's already on an IEP.
Okay, so auditory processing is not a federal eligibility. It definitely is an area of need when you look at the 7 Gs that impacts a student, how they take in information, hold that information, and store it. So it greatly impacts them. MTSS, RTI, SST was abolished in January 2011. There's a letter from OSEP, Office of Special Education Programs, that says, we don't use any of those things to top another level of support or testing. So you certainly could ask for a cognitive test to include all 7 Gs, an IQ test with all 7 Gs, which would, again, measure her auditory processing. That might give you more educational information if you just have a medical auditory processing evaluation to look at what we could do as it relates to accommodations. It would be hard to develop an IEP goal around auditory processing, but we certainly could make adjustments in the delivery, the repetition, where the student sits as it relates to instruction. But that certainly is a need that's going to impact her in school.
Perfect. Is it right for a school to ask parents for a recording device rather than using their own?
Oh, what's the word right even mean? I mean, I've heard all sorts of things. What I do know is I'm not going to offer them my lipstick. The school has everything that they need to conduct professional meetings. If they don't, we can take a minute while they go down to the music teacher's class and get a boom box. Everybody has a recording device. Everybody's phone is a recording device. Everybody's laptop's a recording device. Some of us have a chip in our head. And some of us have just a chip on our shoulder. But no, the parent does not need to provide the local education agency anything to do its job.
Can certified SPED teachers carry the caseload for substitutes in the SPED classroom?
Carry the caseload. I don't know really what that means. Like carry it like down to the river? I don't know what that means.
Maybe. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's see what else I can find in here. Can a principal tell a student, you'll love this one. Can the principal tell a student their kiddo needs to be reevaluated for a psychological hallucination?
I mean, if the student is having auditory hallucinations, internal hallucinations, visual hallucinations, that does trigger child fine. And that would be a reason that you would do updated evaluations, because you certainly want to, at minimum, protect the student. And those things do become onset for students. Yeah.
Great. What can I do if my child's special education teacher is not certified in Gen Ed or SPED? All they have is a high school degree.
I was going to say something, but I'm not going to say that. So you're being denied a free, appropriate public education. Here's what I want to say to all you lovely people. You are not friends with the school. I know that hurts your feelings. You don't have a good relationship with the school. Stop protecting this imaginary relationship. If the school person was supposed to give your child, I don't know, insulin every day, but they didn't, would you let that slide? No. So you need to email the school. My student is being denied a free, appropriate public education. How will the school compensate my student? Do we need to have a meeting to look at out-of-district placement at the district expense? Here's what's not going to happen, kids. I've done this for 27 years. Nobody's going to let you stay till you're 20, 25, 32, going, we blew it. It's never going to happen. You're going to open your mouth and negotiate the IEP you want, or you're going to settle for the IEP you got. And then I just want to jump in. So I think one of the young ladies in here kind of clarified carry the caseload, meaning that they sort of manage the cases, but they don't provide services. So I see that a lot. The problem for a case manager that never provides services is they're often the ones writing this present levels, but they've never worked with the student. So be very careful that your case manager isn't listed as the person who's giving in-class support, but has never worked with the student. We see that a lot in certain districts. I won't name them, but I think you can hear what I'm thinking.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Paige would like to know if it's possible to bring a lawsuit after the school year ends.
It's possible to bring litigation up to 2 years in most states for a due process hearing. It's not really a traditional that we're suing the school, right? You are filing because your student has been denied a free, appropriate public education. You're filing on violation of their procedural rights. So I think sometimes people get confused with I'm bringing a lawsuit, which sounds good, right? But you certainly, in most states, I think all but 6, you can file back for 2 years. And the other states, it's 1 year. Federal complaints with the U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights are 180 days. Appellate federal cases are KD by the door. And I like the door being barred. I don't know who Katie is, but she's in front of the door.
So, okay, Happy has asked several questions, but this one I really like. Why is auditory processing not an eligibility?
It isn't. So auditory processing, you have 2 different things, right? We have medical conditions and then we have educational eligibilities. Let's take, for instance, TBI, traumatic brain injury. Traumatic brain injury is a medical condition that happens to individuals at any point, right? However, as a federal eligibility, TBI is a traumatic brain injury that only occurs after the individual has been born. So, for purposes of this, if you had a child that had cerebral palsy, often that traumatic brain injury occurs during the birth of the baby. So, medically, that's a TBI. But special education, it is after the baby is born. So remember, the parameters are, this is an educational eligibility. This is an educational eligibility that rises to the level of specially designed instruction. So what would be the specially designed instruction if I had auditory processing disorder? So let's think about that. So auditory processing disorder it's when the student struggles to discriminate sounds, but it's neurological, right? So it's not physical as a traditional DHH, deaf and hard of hearing. And so often for those kiddos, when we get really good ENT evaluations, and I see a lot of them, I recommend my families do that a lot, especially when there is ADHD. It really, is, as much as it's neurological, you can make adjustments physically. Like there are kiddos that are way higher on one side than the other side, and that's going to help their acquisition of information. But it is not currently one of the 13 eligibilities.
Would an SLP address an auditory processing?
No, it's neurological. It's not language, right? So it's the inability to discriminate sound. So if all of a sudden I just started talking like this for the rest of there are people that, well, that's irritating, but I can still listen to you, right? So you can drop me off at an airport. I'm so happy with some, almond joys and some beef jerky. The more sound I have, the better. I love sound. But there are people that truly cannot discriminate those sounds. And we see that in kiddos that whether they cover their ears, whether they struggle to acquire information, it's a very real thing, which is why if you have the ability, certainly go to a great ENT. It's great information. There's lots of medical conditions that my kiddos have that I then take as an advocate or one of our partners, and we communicate that to a team in a way that the teachers can understand how they can help the kiddos. And so sometimes there's this gap between needs, but we don't communicate it to the team, right? So if I come in and say, hey, my student has ADHD and dysautonomia, and they write down dysautonomia, which is an OHI, but nobody asks what that is, it doesn't really serve the student. So it's very important in my training. We teach all of you to write a robust, and I mean robust, present levels that are pristine, puffy, and prescriptive. And so we would need to include all of those needs, whether they're medical, whether they're from a therapist, whether they're, from the vacation Bible study lady, daycare. All of that information tells me about a child's unique circumstance. That's the last of Andrew F., March 22nd, 2017. That's the law of the land, the child's unique circumstance. A child is never an eligibility. I could have 10 boys that were all 6 years old, that all had autism and a speech impairment, and they all need something totally different. We need to lean into what the federal law says, their unique circumstances, and that's the totality of all that we've identified that's impacting their ability to learn.
You know what that means?
You know what that means? If you add an emoji, you all get the prize at the end. Yes, pristine, puffy, and prescriptive. Yeah. And people always ask me what puffy is. I'm like, puffy? It's my hairdo. Puffy. It's, your present levels, if they're not 3 pages long, you're not done. You probably haven't even started. I saw a present level the other day. I won't tell you where. She is a sweet little girl. Oh my gosh. What does that do to help anybody? She's a sweet little girl. And then the next line says, she tries really hard at school. You know what that tells me? She's not successful at school. Sweet doesn't do me any good. So, but I'm going to let that go. Oh, somebody just said, I learned a lot from your show. Thank you, Theo. We love a Theo.
We do.
The Karen Show.
Are you ready?
I'm ready, Freddie.
All right. It's rapid fire questions.
Before we do this, ma'am, Alicia, for our viewing audience, could you tell them how to join us in a few minutes on Special Education Academy?
Absolutely. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to www.specialeducationacademy.com. You're going to click on the training tab. And at the top right, it says The Academy, and it's got a pretty cool picture. You're going to click on that. You're going to fill out all your information, yes, including your credit card information, and then you're going to type right in that little box that says, have a coupon code? And you do. You're going to type in your coupon code, which is, in all caps, TikTok Live. That's T for Timothy, I for Indigo, K for Karen, T for Timothy, O for Oliver, K for Karen, L for Levi, I for Indigo, V for Victory, E for Elephant. TikTok Live in all caps. And then you're going to be able to join us live in the Academy tonight. And if you need a visual, all you need to do is go to Karen's TikTok page and click that pinned video at the top, and it'll give you step-by-step instructions.
I feel like you might be replacing Vanna. I feel like you might be you might be turning those cubes.
Vanna needs a raise. Did you? And we're not going to get sidetracked because it's rapid fire questions. We will talk about that later. All right. So I have one. It said, can you add things that staff should not do in the child's BIP or crisis plan? For example, during a meltdown when my child is escalated, they have a habit of demanding an apology.
Well, that's a requirement. We list things that we know have been unsuccessful in the past.
Correct. All right. Can the school supply recess alternatives if the playscape is not accessible?
Yeah, they can make the playscape accessible. That's the alternative. Don't be a criminal.
That's right.
It's about, you know what I'd say? It's about dang time. Since it's only 33 years old.
Anyway, sorry. Okay. How can I get my SPED kid out of the STAR test?
You can't. Of all the things we're going to fight about, state testing is not going to be one of them. So state testing is not addressed in IDEA. It's not addressed in state, in special education statutes and states. Have your kid take it, do their best, and just move on with it.
Amen. If my child has been in ISS consistently for behavior related to autism, what can I do?
I would call a meeting and say, it looks like that your school is unable to provide my student an appropriate educational product. We need to look at out-of-district placement at the expense of the district.
Perfect. And someone said, is Texas no longer doing 504s?
That is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. Texas ranks 50th. Say it with me. 50 in special education delivery services out of 50. They rank number 1 in the United States of America for 504 because we just lie to people and tell them how amazing a 504 is. So yeah, we're still doing, we are leading the charge on taking kids with a disability and giving them no special ed services. Did I say that? Yeah.
Woo! He said, how can I get you to review my son's IEP?
Just send us an email at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com.
And I'll put that in the chat. My daughter has autism and was denied OT therapy at school because she has OT outside of school. Is that legal?
So it wouldn't matter if your mom and dad invented OT. Sorry, I'm just making some adjustments here. Can y'all tell? This is going to make for a great video. This is all shaky. OT, what you do at home has nothing to do with an educational need. So first I would tell people, stop telling everybody what you're doing at home. An educational need is about what happens in the walls of the school. So whether or not your mom takes you to OT 18 times a week or never has nothing to do with the school's responsibility to providing the OT if there's an educational need.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you something, and I think you're going to think it's pretty unbelievable for this state. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Louisiana's going to start having a PLAF?
No.
Oh.
That would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is about Kentucky.
Oh, I love Kentucky.
It says, I was in a professional development today, and they said students have to go through RTI no matter what.
Wow. So go to Google and type in OSEP in all caps. I'm sure Christina's going to put that in there. OSEP, January 2011 RTI letter. Kentucky. Come on now.
Together, Kentucky.
Get it together, people.
All right. Should service times be amended at the start of the year or wait until annual review?
They should be amended when they're not right.
Correct. Oh, you just answered that question about the OSEP letter.
Letter.
Does SDI minutes on the IEP need to be provided by a certified special education teacher?
They need to be provided by a special educator. So a VI teacher is a special educator. A physical therapist is a special educator. So depending on what the service is, obviously if it's reading, it's not going to be by a PT, but it's going to be a special educator only.
Okay. What was that email address again?
That email address, again, was advocate@specialeducationacademy.com.
Look how fast I typed that in the chat. That's pretty quick.
You must have,
Right.
been a typing aficionado.
No, or it's just my phone is used to me typing it a lot. Okay. Our IEP states that my son is required to have a one-on-one aide. Ours quit last year. They still haven't hired one. What should I do?
I would email the school and say he's not going to be able to come to school till you can implement his IEP. The schools do not like you not coming to school because that's how they get paid. And if students don't show up to school, they are in trouble with the state. So that would speed the hiring process along. I'm not going to be able to send my kid to school since you're unable to implement his IEP.
Okay. I like it. All right. This is a good question, I think, from a parent. It says, is homework included in quote-unquote chunking or quality over quantity as an accommodation on the IEP?
No, both of those things occur in the instructional setting.
Is there a law on how many times a SPED student is in ISS or OSS?
No.
My son was dismissed from speech therapy because he received outside speech therapy.
Yeah, that's when you would say, I smell a candle. I think it's pants on fire. Yeah, you're not dismissed from something because you have, your parents are providing it when the school day is over. You're dismissed from something because you no longer have an educational need.
All right, and this one said, can my son go to gen ed and special ed preschool?
So there is no requirement for general ed preschool. There are students who are not kindergarten age who attend some school districts that don't have an identified disability. But there are no requirements for general ed students to come to pre-K. So that's a very slippery slope when parents think that their kids are going in with gen ed students. A lot of times those students, which are fantastic, are staff member students, or they're not, they're English language learners. So, yeah. Why are you laughing? This is serious business. There's no laughing.
What you were talking about, ma'am.
What?
Okay. It had nothing to do with you.
Oh. Had nothing to do with me. That's
Nothing to do
shocking.
with you. Okay, are you ready? All right, moving on. My child's school is refusing mental health support within the school setting despite on-campus... I don't know what the rest of the question is, sorry.
Did you see? I'm sorry. I'm going to break the law here. But somebody just said, please tell us what that is. Please email us that TikTok because I will duet that. Somebody just said that some lady posted a stack of IEPs on a TikTok. Is that legal?
Oh, yes. I just seen that.
No. Y'all send that to me.
The IEP, is it the IEP mom? Which one is it? She duetted it and was like, do you know how illegal it is what you just did? Because if you pause it, you can zoom in and read the parent's information.
No.
Yes.
Well, SFA, she said she deleted it. The fact that she duetted it,
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter if it's the original person deleted it. All the people that duetted it, you can watch their videos. Y'all got to be careful what y'all post online, people.
What you doing?
That's right. See, Jude? He said, yeah, you got to be careful. Even Jude knows. Okay, is there
I'm gonna need to get a copy of that. But then I'll shred it.
Yes.
I'll have Quinn shred it. I'll take it to Quinn's house. Cover your eyeball. We go live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, except for July 4th.
Oh, somebody's tagging you in it now. All right.
Oh, I'm excited.
Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What can be done with a child who has struggled at home but masking at school?
There's not an onus on the school district if there is not an educational need at school, and I call it the minivan door syndrome. There are kids that unload at home and are just, they cover it up, they hold it together all day. It's a real thing, and it limits the ability for the school to help the student.
And as a mother whose child did that, you are not alone. Okay, anyways. My child's school is... oh, no, we did that one. Is there anything that should be included in a letter to request a reevaluation?
Well, you shouldn't have to have a letter for a reevaluation. That's a legal requirement. But I would say since our reevaluation date's coming up, these are the evaluations that we're asking for. Please make sure that that paperwork is available at our next meeting. And then we're going to take one more question so I can apply more lipstick for our training.
Oh, man. No. Everybody's going to be like, pick me. But I already found one, so nobody found it. I've already done it. I had a good one. It said, what accommodations should be provided to a student with a loss?
So accommodations are providing to a student based on their unique circumstances. So every student that has a hearing loss has different needs. So again, that would be based upon the acuity of their hearing loss, the totality of it, what sort of DHH services are being provided, deaf and hard of hearing services, what services are being provided by an interpreter, if any, what amplified services are being provided.
Karen, did you read that? She said the IEP mom was able to text the parent because that's how much she could see their information on that document. That's crazy. All right, we're done. Wrapping it up.
We're wrapping it up like a burrito. All right, you guys, remember, we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. We'll see you guys in Special Education Academy.